1001, it's a mother and son story. It's about Inez. She's a young woman who's just come out of Rikers and quickly reunites with her son who's in the foster care system. And because she's afraid that she might lose him again once he's moved to a new foster home, she decides to just impulsively take him and rebuild their life together. So you see them set out on this journey to bring their family back together in a New York City that's changing around them. It is a story about a family versus a city. I think in addition to that, it's a story about mother and son relationships. It's a story about dynamics between men and women, and particularly with Black women feeling like they fight so hard to protect both their families and their communities at large, yet they're so overlooked. I think this movie is also about generational cycles, the trauma and challenges that Black communities have faced over time, and just how hard it is just across generations to overcome that. And within the movie, when the movie starts, we're in 90s New York, which is at the tail end of a very rough period for the city, and it would have especially been a rough period for Harlem. The period where we begin the movie is very different than the period where we end it. I think the costuming, obviously that's really fun, digging into the 90s, the baggy pants, the Timbs, like just all those little staples that not only represent the era, but also just like what was hip in New York. I think the way Inez dresses, she's definitely indicative of 90s women, but in the 2000s, even with Terry and like the huge white T-shirts, Sean John, like just things that were like staples of the era were really fun to integrate. And it's so weird because it's like a lot of those trends are coming back now, but they really were staples of that time. I think music, it really plays a huge role in the film, not only in giving audiences a taste of what it really is like in New York City. New York City, you walk down the street, you're getting so many different flavors of different types of people, personalities, and also music is all around you, especially in a neighborhood like Harlem. Like if you get off the train and you just walk one block, you're gonna hear like, 4 generations of Black music and more. You're just getting all these eras stacked on top of each other as people just appreciate and blast it in the neighborhood. So I really wanted the film to feel immersed like that because I really wanted people to feel like this is the energy of what New York feels like. And by the end of the movie, as it gets quieter, kind of feel that being washed away a little bit. But I think there's also a commentary in it, particularly about like, generational cycles, both the tragedies and triumphs that each generation has to overcome and within Black communities. And it's so interesting because you hear that in our music, the way our music kind of like is in call and response to each other. So, you have one record that might have coming out like back in the 60s or the 70s or the 80s just to be sampled and reinterpreted in the 90s and the 2000s as we hear it in the movie. When the casting Inez, I knew that the role was going to be very demanding for any actress, and I would have loved a number of actresses to play, this character just in terms of so many people I'm a fan of. I think the only hesitation for me is I really wanted some truthfulness to come through. I really wanted to feel like the person playing this role really had a rawness and a authentic representation of what a New York City woman is and an underprivileged woman is. I didn't want any piece of that to feel performative. I didn't want to have to worry about weird things that just like, accent stuff and all that. Like I just wanted somebody just through and through, you believed her. You believed that this was her experience. And I saw that with Tiana. It wasn't until Tiana's tape that I saw somebody who had that combination, not only the talent and depth of a really great actress, but also somebody who reflected the heart and soul of who this woman is in the real world. I think I could tell that Tiana, either she knows this woman, has been this woman at some point in life, and therefore she's in the best position to tell this woman's story. It came from a real place of empathy, being with her instead of like looking down at her. It's interesting casting Will. I think originally in my head I saw somebody that might be actually a bit younger, but it just made way more sense to go with somebody at Will's age and just his physical presence. You really feel the wisdom of a man with him. I think not only is he an incredible actor, I think looking at his original audition, I think he gave one of the performances that would just like, it was very unique from everybody else, and I think that immediately caught my attention. I think in addition to that, I felt like he had the type of presence that Tiana and Inez could submit to. You really had to believe for this woman who is such a force that in the presence of this man, she would be able to really like, you know, be her most vulnerable self, and feel like, you know, kind of quiver in his presence a little bit, just like in that type of love dynamic. But I think outside of the way he related to Inez, it was really important that he also knew how to relate to Terry, somebody who could have this tough presence, but also have a layer to him that could be very vulnerable, and have the type of fatherly presence that Terry needed. I definitely think that Tiana and Will being parents, I think that helped a lot. I think Tiana in particular, I think she was able to bring a lot of the warmth, her being like that motherly energy to her partners, you know, working with Aaron and Avon and Josiah. I think that for Will, he's a parent as well, and so I think that helped him. But I also think he actually had really great parents. I think because he had a great father, he knew how to be a great father to Terry and to the actors that he was performing alongside. And that was actually insightful for me because I would have thought the opposite, that somebody who didn't have a father figure would relate more to this character and therefore be able to connect in a certain way. But I think I was like pleasantly surprised and informed, and the character benefited tremendously from that. To me, Josiah represented Terry fully actualized. And Josiah, I think he always tickles me because I think I really love the way he was able to take on the spirit of this young New York man because he's not from the city. And so I think he was able to really represent Terry fully actualized because he soaked up everything of this character's life experience up until the moment when we meet him again in 2005. And I think even in the subtlest moments, you know, just like he could be so stoic, but just like the look behind his eyes would tell you everything. So he was really such a pleasure to work with, and I appreciated, again, just the truthfulness that came with him because I think like Tiana, it's just like I really wanted to feel with all these characters just like true reflections of my experience as a New Yorker and somebody who grew up in the inner city of it, and I didn't want anything to feel like a caricature. I think Inez's relationship with Terry, it's very complicated, and I think it reflects a lot of people's dynamics in real life with their moms or their sons. I think in particular, for me, their relationship, it was a reflection of so many people I know in real life that struggle in the dynamics because the mom, for whatever reason, she was not able to either be around physically, emotionally, or both. In the case of Inez, she's a young 20-something. She would have had Terry, you know, in her teenage years, and I think like she's still figuring herself out. I feel like it was especially important to see Inez's humanity as a mother because I think we over idealize our parents so much, and we don't give them room to just be a human that's figuring out life while they're trying to create a better life for us. So I think my hope is that within the dynamic that Terry and Inez have to overcome, that people will understand their parents better and be able to heal a little bit more and know that if I did make mistakes, it wasn't because I didn't love you. I think family is beyond bloodlines. I think, you know, there's the family you're born into, but there's also the family you choose, which can be an incredibly beautiful and powerful thing. I think what family comes down to is love in not only a sense of a feeling or an attachment to another human being, but how you choose to show up for them. And I think we see that in the film. Like, each of these characters are challenged in different ways to show up for the people that they love, and in addition to just receiving everything that person has to give them.